In this video I'm going to show you guys how to cut the frog, install the throw bar, and put on your tie stick. Now you're going to need some plyo bond, which I have inside this bottle here. Solder, of course, a couple of files, fancy dancy little scribe, flux, marker, of course the handy dandy tweezers, block wood, a pair of wire cut or rail nippers, and of course your turnout and your jig. Now that we've got everything else already all assembled, now we're going to go ahead and take the turnout out of the jig, and we're going to go ahead and cut up this frog. Now I like to go ahead and use a jeweler's saw, and this is one thing I didn't mention. You guys can go ahead and use a Dremel tool or something like that. However, I like to use the jeweler's saw because the jeweler's saw will cut a smaller gap inside the frog. An end scale, you know, HO guys can probably get away with a lot easier to go and use a Dremel tool. I myself I choose not to because the tool is just you can't really get a good cut on there. So what I do is I'll just lay the turnout down at the end, and normally I do this at the end of the desk, and I just hold my finger down there. You can also use a popsicle stick and stick a popsicle stick up in there, be able to hold your saw nice and straight. All you want to do is just hold it nice and light and be able to go ahead and cut. And as it starts getting through there and you start hitting that bottom rail, it's going to start grabbing a little bit. So you want to make sure that you're not pushing down too hard up on there. Make sure that the saw is actually doing all the work and not you. Now I'm not quite used to doing this because normally I got this at the edge of my desk. You're going to try to go and cut through both rails at the exact same time. As you get down there so far, then you're going to have to kind of twist it a little bit. I like to hold it down there until the block until I get so far, then of course you're going to have to take and turn it there just a little bit. Let's go ahead and pop this right here on out. Now if something happens here with these rails and they start to loosen up on you or something, it's not hard to go ahead and grab a piece of solder and touch them up and get them to line back up. Just make sure you got that gap down inside of there. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the other part of the rail, and it's in between the other two ties there. Basically you're just going to do the exact same thing. Like I said, I like to hold my finger there. Reminding yourself to go ahead and let the jeweler's saw do up all the work for you. A Dremel tool would be a lot quicker, but you know, if you happen to slip, you'll end up damaging the other rail or something, and it wouldn't look quite as good. Jeweler's saw, you're going to go and get a nice smaller cut, and then when your wheel sets are rolling across there, it'll look a lot better. There we go. Now the frog is cut. Now here I ended up pushing down on this other rail. That's no big deal. We can just take and touch that right there up. We'll just put a little, just add a little drop of flux on there and just make sure it's going to get a good grab. And what I'll do when I'm touching it up, I'll stick a piece of tie up underneath there so I can be able to push that back down again. Just kind of hold it right where it's at, making sure I got that. There we go. Back in business. Oh, maybe not. We actually damaged the tie itself. It actually pulled the backing out, the PCB part of it. So that's no big deal. Since this is a how-to video, these are probably some of the problems that you guys are going to run into. So we're just going to go ahead and fix this so you guys can kind of see what happens. All you're going to do here is just take and desolder that whole piece. You're going to take that PCB tie right up on out of there. I'll just go ahead and take and mark out another tie. This happens, it's no big deal, it's an easy fix. Now we're going to go right back over here to step 1, which is marking out the PCB ties. I'm going to go ahead and put our little marker marks up inside of there. I'm just going to cut up a new one. It's really no big deal. Grab our file. Get that thing right where you want it. It could have been a bad tie, it could have been just the way it was soldered together. It's really hard to say. Try to get your gaps down inside of there. And this is going to happen to any of the ties. We're just going to go ahead and slide that back down inside of there. We'll take our turnout, we'll pop that right there back down in there. Now we're just going to go ahead and add some flux. And we'll go ahead and we'll just drop it down up over here too at the same time. We'll finish desoldering this one. Now it's completely off. There's a little bit of solder up underneath there, that's fine. Now on this part right here, when you go to replace them, remind yourself that you guys already have your gap already pre-cut. And we'll just go ahead and take some solder, drop a piece of solder down up on there, and then set that gap just right where you want it at. Try to go and get it about the same distance as what you had it before. And all you want to do then is just go ahead and hit it there with the solder. And hopefully my head's not in the way here. I changed my hat, and I guess I didn't really realize it inside the videos that I did previously. So I'm very sorry about that. I'll make sure that I'm trying to watch and pay a little bit more attention as far as what my big head here is doing. So we're just going to go and do the same thing with the other tie, or with the other rail, excuse me. Make sure you guys get some, get some solder up there in the base of the rail, so that's what's going to hold it all up in there. Now that that part right there is done, we'll take and solder up our outside two edges here of the rail. Same thing with the other side. There we go. It's looking pretty darn good now. There we go. All back together again, looking good. Won't be no problems right there rolling through that frog or nothing. It'll be just fine. Now we're going to, now we're going to go ahead and cut out here for the throw bar. What I like to do is I like to go ahead and take and just nip down just a little bit off them ends. Get my throw bar up in there. It's a little bit too long. We'll just take and mark it right where it needs to be so it'll fall down into place. And what I do is I'll actually go ahead and place my turnout back up on there, and go ahead and mark it. Now what I do, and I don't know that you necessarily need to, but this is just something that I do, is I will actually go ahead and mark my two, I put 2 gaps in there. And I always, the straight rail, I always go ahead and do that one first. So I'll put a mark and another mark. The second mark is basically right there inside the center, because you're going to be pulling this other rail back on over, and it's going to tighten it back up again. And then I take my steel scribe, and I'll actually go ahead and poke just a little bit of a hole right there, just so you got a place for that drill bit to go ahead and go. I'll pull this right here back out. Grab a board. Grab our triangular file. And these files, they wear down, so pay attention to how them gaps are actually cutting onto everything. We'll just need to cut it down here a little bit more here on the other side. There we go. That's all the way through. Then for me, I use the number 65 drill bit. And then right where I marked it at with that steel punch, I'll get my drill bit down inside of there. And then I always put one finger down, like my thumb or something, to be able to hold on to the bottom of the tie. Well, normally I'm doing this a little bit closer to myself, but this will work out. And I don't put too much pressure once when I start getting through there, because otherwise you'll end up pushing down on the copper itself on the PCB tie. And once you get all the way through, I do the same thing on this as I do with all my other ties. I take it across my emery cloth here. Whoops. Now I'll run it all the way down, get that all nice and clean. If I see if I missed anything, I'll go ahead and go through it again. I'm going to spin something on the PCB tie itself. I want to make sure it's nice and clean, so I'll take a nice weld to it, just like all the other ones. Now I'll just take my flat file, clean up right where I cut it at, make it nice and square. Just same thing with the other side, even though it's factory, I still do it anyhow. Once again, you want to make sure that there's no burrs that are sticking up off there. One little burr can create a big problem, especially when you're trying to find a short circuit. Now another thing you'll need is, I just use an old receipt. This is a shipping receipt from sending out a package. And you just tear off a piece of paper off of there. And what I do, you take the piece of paper, the receipt, and pull out the points, and stick that piece of paper right down in between there. What you do is you just fold it on over, and you can stick the turnout back inside the jig. And what this is going to do is it's going to make sure that the point doesn't get soldered to the stock rail. So now you're just going to go ahead and put some flux stone on there. Oops, there we go. Make sure you got your PCB tie right where you want it. Take my tweezers here. Now for these right here, I use a little bit more solder. You want to make sure you get some solder up there under them points. You need to get it going up through the rail. There's going to be a lot of pressure up there. I'm going to turn up the soldering iron up here just a touch. Now what you're going to do is you're going to hold the stock rail down, or the points down up against that stock rail. Make sure it's nice and tight up against there. Don't be pushing too hard, but you want to make sure it's nice and tight because you got that paper up in there and everything else. Just go and give it a little bit of pressure. Then you want to make sure you get the solder up there into the rail. If there's not enough, go and grab just another small little piece and drop it down on there. If you get too much, it's okay. You got a file, you got an X-Acto knife, take and clean it up with the X-Acto knife, and then you'll be just fine. You'd rather have too much than too little. Now you got that side right there done. I can actually pop the turnout out. And what I like to do on this part is I'll take and can pull out this piece of paper here. What we're going to do here is we're actually going to take another piece of tie, run that down in between the rails. We're going to pull this other point right here open. Whoops. I'm going to pull that point right there open, and I run it all the way down. And I'll turn it again, so it's facing towards me. Let's get that thing out of there. What you're going to do is just kind of hold that thing nice and straight as you can. It doesn't matter if you're perfect, because when these the throw bar is going to twist anyhow. There's no way to truly keep the throw bar straight. Once again, take and put your piece of paper in there, and I can't begin to tell you how many times I have not thrown in my piece of paper. I've actually forgotten it and soldered my points right down to the throw bar and the stock rail. But hey, it happens. Take and run that on up in there. And once again, you want to make sure that this point right here is closed all the way. That's being pushed tight. Okay, and then keep that throw bar right there nice and straight. Then what I do is I'll take, here it is, take this once again, get that throw bar so it's straight, and then I put my thumb up on there so I can hold it nice and tight, and go ahead and get my solder on there. Now this one here, I'm just going to automatically go ahead and put 2 small pieces on there, so I know how I ended up cutting them up here. Hold that thing straight, get that solder up there into the rail, and release. Take out that other tie, pop that right there out, pull out your paper, and now you got yourself a set of points. And those right there work pretty good. I just noticed that I got a piece right here that's not soldered tight, but that's okay. This is one that my kid ended up doing here, which is no big deal. She's still learning yet. I must say, for 12 years old, she did a pretty darn good job on building her first turnout. It took her a whole day to do it, but it's looking pretty darn good. She says she wanted to sit down and watch the videos, and so that's what I did. I let her watch the videos. There we go. Alright, there's looking pretty darn good. Now we got that part of it done. Now we're going to go ahead and put on the all the ties. Now if you guys want to go ahead and hand lay ties, whatever, of course that's, you know, preference, personal preference. On myself, I use the quick sticks because for me, well, it's just simply easier. So for this step right here, I'll just use my plyo bond. Make sure that your plyo bond is kneaded up and shaken or whatever, and grab an extra paper towel. If too much ends up coming out or something like that, you can just take and wipe it on off so you don't get too much down on there. Make sure you got your quick stick going the right direction for how you want it. I've done that. I can't say how many times I've done that one too. Go ahead and glue this right here up the wrong way. Now what I do is when I come through here, this is this section right here for the points, I never do. It's going to break on out of there. That's fine. I will take and actually take this piece right here, and when I go do my ballast and everything else and glue down my ballast, that's when I go ahead and actually glue this right here to the points, because you want to make sure that those things move nice and free. So I myself, I don't put anything on there. this plyo bond, it tends to get pretty darn sticky. Another thing you want to do is make sure you don't squeeze the bottle. It tends to come out in a really quick hurry, no matter how fine the tube is that's on there. You can just basically just hold it and just basically just kind of pull it out once it starts coming out. Just take and just drag it all the way on through. Reminding yourself and trying to remember not to go ahead and pull through right where them points sit. Just take and draw it on through. I'm going to grab these ones too right here at the same time. And you want to make sure you don't get too much on there. Get too much on there, it'll tend to ooze out all over the place, and that's something you just don't want. Just make a nice little line. Bring it all the way on through. If you notice it's starting to dry up in spots, go ahead and just add a little bit more. It's no big deal. You don't want too much on there though, because the soldering iron will actually go ahead and cure it, because that's how we're going to speed up this process. And you just take the turnout once nuts on there. Just go ahead and watch how you set it on down. Square it all up. And just go ahead and snug it on down on there. Then what I do is, now this part right here, I'll actually hold on to this because we don't want to heat up any of our solder joints to take off any of our solder. So what I'll do is I'll actually go ahead and hold my fingers down on there so I can actually feel the heat. If my fingers are getting too hot, I know that the solder is going to start melting pretty darn soon. Then I'll just take and just rub it back and forth. Listen for that squeaking and stuff. Go ahead and heat it up really good. Ties start turning color, that's no big deal. Go ahead and heat it up right here just a little bit. Down through here. You'll actually watch that plyo bond kind of bubble up there a little bit. That's a good thing. Then you know it's getting some heat. If you got too much down there, use an X-Acto knife and just kind of peel it all right back on out of there. Be prepared to go ahead and have some hot fingers too, by the way. And this will fully cure in, it's, I don't know, 8-10 hours or something like that. I never really paid any attention to it, to the actual cure time. This is just what I do, speed up this process. You don't need to do that section. I'm just going to try to do a bigger section here in a quicker hurry just to speed up this video here a little bit. Go ahead and heat them all up really good. Like I said, this right here is just going to kind of help cure everything. I really don't worry about the guardrails right there inside the center. They're going to get time to go and cure up. The reason why I'm doing the outside edges here is so that they can be able to cure up and a little bit, so I can break off the edges. Which some of these edges right here, I don't think that they're going to break off properly for this video. There we go. I don't think I did this one over here, so we're going to go ahead and do this one. And just get them lined up the best you can up there at the ends of the ties. You're going to see this one side right here just didn't quite stick. And the reason being is because I didn't have, she didn't cut down this one tie, which is no big deal. There we go. And after that, all you have to do then is just hold on to the back of the ties and just slowly snap it all the way on down. And then go and get it all the way down. There's one side. Remember, this part right here is going to fall off because we didn't put no glue on there. I want to make sure that them points right there stay nice and free. There we go. Once again, this part right here is off. I suppose a guy could go ahead and try to glue it and not worry about it, but I'm not going to. Then there's your points. Your points and your ties and your frog. Go ahead and just go ahead and glue it all together, and there you go. Now you guys got a nice turnout. Feel free to leave any questions or comments, anything else. Be more than happy to go ahead and answer anything. And hope you guys enjoyed the series on building a turnout.